Welcome to the Fantasy Baseball Beat part of the Pitcher List Podcast Network. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Torres. I'll be your host today. On today's episode, we'll be joined by a special guest. We have Laura Albanese, New York Mets beat writer for Newsday, and also the co-host of the First Time Listener, Long Time Caller podcast. She'll be with us talking all things New York Mets. We'll get her take on the Mets' recent losing streak, Francisco Lindor's struggles, Nolan Mclain's debut, Juan Sodto's first season in Queens, and much, much more. I'm also joined by my co-hosts, Mike and Dave. We'll hear from them shortly. But without further ado, let's bring in Laura. This is her, I believe, her third time on the podcast. So we are so appreciative of her being so gracious with her time. Laura, welcome back. How are you doing?
I'm doing fairly well. I'm pretty sure I've cursed the Mets, but other than that, things are fine.
Well, I'm glad, you made that revelation before we went on. So, for all the Mets fans listening, send all of your hate mail to Laura, and you could provide your direct email later in the show, because apparently once Laura officially became part of the Mets beat, that's when things have fallen apart for this team. So at least everybody's been asking, what's going on with this team? What's going on with this team? Well, now we know. So thank you for taking the onus here.
Absolutely. Please send glitter bombs.
Glitter
Very
bombs.
specifically. I hate vacuuming, so that's the way you get me.
All right. Well, on a serious note, though, what the heck is going on with this team? I mean, they are in such a tailspin right now. The Mets have lost 10 out of their last 11 games, losing some games in just absolutely brutal fashion. I gotta ask you, what is the vibe in the clubhouse right now with the way this team is playing?
I mean, I feel like everyone asks about like vibes and chemistry, but the truth is I've been covering baseball for about, I don't know, 10, 12 years at this point. Vibes and chemistry are important, but they only exist when you win. You can have great vibes when you're winning. It's really hard to have great vibes when you're losing. So, in essence, this is the same team as last year. The clubhouse is mostly stable. They are very business oriented. I feel like the onus of winning this season is far greater than it was from last season. And I do think there is a little bit more pressure there. And so it has changed the tenor of just like how they go about their business. But we even saw it toward the tail end of the season where Francisco Lindor was like, no, this is the year I want to win a World Series. Like these people are absolutely focused on winning. And I do think sometimes while that is 100% the way that a team has to approach business, it can create a different sort of atmosphere in the clubhouse. And I do feel that's what we're seeing with the Mets right now.
That makes a lot of sense. They seem tight. And I think especially in light of what happened last year, where they were just this kind of like fun upstart team. They're having concerts after the game, it just like there's a different feel, and it makes sense that there's additional pressure. Like now they are expected to make it back to at least the NLCS. And many people were thinking this is a World Series contender. So yeah, it definitely, as an outside observer, it does seem like there is definitely more pressure, and there's a different feel to this team. I think the missing piece is they don't have a salsa singer in that clubhouse.
I mean, frankly, Jose Iglesias, the fact that he could always get on base with these weird like infield hits would be really helpful right now. I think everyone
Yeah.
looked at it like, oh, he was just a vibes guy. No, he got on base.
Right.
And what did we
right.
learn from Moneyball? You gotta get on base, and
Yeah.
that's what they're missing a little bit. But you've got these guys who swing for the fences, which is great. You've got Jeff McNeil who's doing great. You've got Starling Marte who's doing great. But beyond that, you just need people on base. If you look at how many home runs Juan Sodto has had, which I think it's about like 25, 26 at this point, how many has he hit with people on base? Not that many.
Yeah.
You need people on base to score runs. And that's an issue. And that's an issue for this team.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems that way for sure. Laura, you mentioned Francisco Lindor a couple of minutes ago, and he's really been struggling the last couple of months. Going back to June 1st, he's hitting 205 with a 634 OPS. Not good stuff there. What do you think is going on behind this extended slump for him? And do you think that fractured toe is wreaking havoc on him in any way?
I wouldn't be surprised if it did. I would say that it's a 6-week period for that fractured toe to heal. So at this point, it should be healed. However, when you're a hitter, mechanics are an issue. So if you're trying to compensate for something over an extended period of time, I expect you to try to compensate for it, and maybe it can mess up your mechanics. That being said, I asked Carlos Mendoza about it, and he said, with a bunch of these guys, and he wasn't targeting Francisco Lindor specifically, they're getting behind the count, they're swinging at bad pitches, they're starting to press, and then they're missing the pitch to hit, and then they're just they're just chasing. Mm-hmm. So that indicates to me, one, kind of people, again, we talked about before, people who are pressing, but also perhaps kind of an issue in communication in terms of okay, how do I navigate this at bat? How do I deal with this? How do I deal with these issues? And what's baffling to me, and I don't have an answer to this, people will ask me okay, so why are the Mets struggling so much when they have such a great lineup? And these are professional hitters who have been doing this for a long, long time. But for some reason, the results are just you're not seeing them. And everybody wants to know why, and nobody has a reason. And if you had a reason, you'd be getting paid a lot of money at this point. So I think, people like to talk about the hitting coaches. I don't necessarily think it's totally the hitting coach's fault. I think maybe it is an issue of possibly too much information. You have two hitting coaches. All these guys have their own kind of hitting labs. They're getting all this input from everybody else, and you're overthinking it when you go up to the plate. And sometimes when that happens, you can just kind of overthink yourself out of an at-bat. And I feel that's what you're seeing when you see them go behind on counts and then chasing and then just trying and pushing and pushing and pushing. And what happens is how we talk about in baseball, getting the yips. You get so much into your own head that you keep doing the same thing over and over again. And it becomes an issue, and then you just can't produce.
Mm-hmm. Laura, can you tell us about your experience covering the first trade deadline as a beat writer this season? And were you surprised about the moves that they didn't make?
I actually wasn't surprised. I mean, the trade deadline was kind of a journey for me because I woke up that morning. I was in a hotel in San Diego because they were playing the Padres, and I flip up my laptop, and the entire screen is cracked.
So oh no!
That's not the day for that to happen.
For the first time in my life, I had no computer to work on. I'm of all days, this is the day for this to happen. So I'm trying my best. I've been hosting my own podcast, so I had an external mic and an external camera, so I was able to do the David Stearns press conference on that. But I am sitting in the middle of a hotel with the one computer in the lobby, writing all my trade deadline news, trying to break news with a bunch of people surrounding me in the hotel bar, ordering margaritas. So that was fun. I think they did what I thought they would do. Everyone obviously wanted them to get starting pitching help. The market was not there for starting pitching. It was just, you would have had to mortgage everything for essentially just nothing. I think David Stearns did what he could. I would have liked more offensive help. Everyone was talking about the pitching, and rightfully they should have. But at that point, Cedric Mullins was a pretty good get. I thought Tyler Rogers was a fantastic pickup. Helsley, I did not expect them to get, and the fact that they got him was great. The problem is with when you have such a great back end of a bullpen is that you actually need to have a lead at some point. At any point for
so you could use them. Yeah.
So,
that would be helpful.
Yeah, that would be great. So when you have okay, so here's this insane submariner, and here's this guy who hits triple digits, and here's this other guy who hits triple digits. It doesn't matter if you're down 5-2 in the 9th inning. So that being said, I feel like David Stearns was in a difficult position because the lineup is underperforming. The talent is there. It's just figuring out why the talent isn't producing to the level it should.
Now, how close do you think the Mets were to maybe moving one of their young position players like Vientos or Beatty or even Mauricio?
I think probably Vientos was the closest one to getting moved. I just don't think the return was good enough. And, like Vientos, we saw it last year. We saw the potential that he had. But this was the type of year, again, we are talking about rentals essentially at this point. If you look at a lot of players that we removed, there were not a lot of people with like under team control for a long time. So you want to move this kid that could very well be a very decent major league player for a long time. There were just not the pieces there. I looked around. I was trying to figure out, like, all right, okay, so they want to move Vientos for what? For who? But what they got for basically, like guys who maybe will not pan out was pretty good. Vientos, for all of the struggles this year, has at least proven that, in a certain position, he can adapt to major league pitching. And I think that's important. And I have not given up on Vientos yet by far. And I do not think the return was like even close to high enough.
Yeah, it's interesting because here in Chicago, there was a lot of rumor going around the weeks before the deadline that the White Sox had offered them Luis Robert for Vientos, like straight up. And I was like, there's no way the Mets are going to take that trade.
No.
Robert's got two $20 million options coming his way. The Sox are stuck with him. I mean, just face facts, right? So.
No, I don't see that. And you also have to think about how David Stearns works. He does not like those kind of like the way that you've seen David Stearns operate. He doesn't like things with extremely high risk and low reward. He likes to play his odds. You see the way that he deals with pitchers. He knows that pitchers are injury prone. So does he give pitchers long-term contracts? No, he doesn't ever. And he does that for a reason. So you have to think about like baseball. Yeah, it's a business. It's always a business, but you have to think about the psychology of the people around it. This is a guy who likes to kind of like count his cards a little bit and be like, okay, so what are the reasonable risks? And frankly, Vientos has too much of an upside to just throw him away for nothing.
Yeah. With I'm going a little bit off of our outline here, but with Stearns, I wonder, like, this is very different, obviously, than when he was in Milwaukee, right? He had a very limited payroll there, and he did an amazing job. And, I mean, he did a great job putting this team together, obviously, what happened last year. And, I mean, everybody expected them to be really good this year. But I don't know if Stearns has that, I guess, that go for it mentality. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, now he's got the money to spend. And part of me is like, is he still operating like he's in Milwaukee? Or is he, like, is he ready to go get? Because listen, this team was short going into the season. Like, everybody knew, like, there's not a guy at the top of this rotation that's going to carry you. And that's becoming obviously a major issue, this season with their lack of high-end pitching. I don't know. Any thoughts on that and just the way he operates and how it fits within this market?
I would push back against that just because, I mean, he signed Juan Sodto.
I mean, yes, I know he signed
Juan Sodto. But I mean, you have to look at Stearns' philosophy on pitching, which I think is valid, if not foolproof. So when you're looking about his philosophy on pitching, and I think what you're talking about is the way that he approaches, like getting like a frontline ace type of guy. These guys are getting hurt at like an incredible rate. Yeah. And a lot of it is because pitching has turned to optimization. So you're talking about throwing a lot harder, and a lot of people are trying to throw a lot of different pitches really quickly and trying to make those pitches look good really fast at a rate that they have not done in the past. So what we're seeing is that all these really good pitchers are just like, they're blowing out their arms. So why would you give someone a 5-year contract when they're only going to be good for 2 years? So that's what he's doing. That's why he's fortifying the bullpen as opposed to like their starters. That's why he's doing this. You look at a Paul Skeens. When I look at a Paul Skeens, I'm like, man, that is incredible. How long until he blows out his arm? How long?
Yeah.
Because that is just the pattern that we're noting. You're better off with a Max Fried who throws still pretty hard, but not quite as hard. And it's kind of like the more like traditional sort of pitcher. So I think that's what he's doing. In terms of spending money, I don't think it's like a mentality. I think it's kind of like it's chess. He's trying to get the most bang for his buck. What can I do that will make this team, because he is working under Steve Cohen, who wants very much to have a sort of generational dynastic team.
Mhm.
What can he do to make this team a long-term success as opposed to just like one World Series?
Gotcha.
That, however, and I will say this, is a risk because this is baseball. And baseball, you had the Diamondbacks in the World Series. Like, you can have anybody in the World Series with the expanded playoffs. So they are trying to build a dynasty, which I understand, which is great. But dynasties don't really exist anymore in the sport.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very much a balance, and he's trying to navigate all of that. So no, I don't think he's overly cautious. I just think he has, I don't know, a sort of strategy that may or may not work. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I just want to follow up quickly on the on Vientos and Mauricio and Beatty. It looks like Brett Beatty's gotten the last 4 starts at third base. Vientos has not started during those 4 games. Do you think this is just a matter of them playing the hot hand? Do you think Beatty is taking seeds of of everyday playing time? How do you see that all working out between those young position players?
So this is interesting because I actually asked Carlos Mendoza that yesterday, not specifically that question, but I'm like, hey, Mark Vientos hasn't started. He's only started 1 game since August 6th. So what are you seeing there? Is he hurt? Is there, because sometimes that could be the case and they're just like not talking about it. And I felt like Carlos Mendoza's answer was pretty indicative of how they view it. It's like, no, we're just trying to do what makes us win. So maybe right now they're not quite so high on Vientos. And I think part of that is because Starling Marte is so hot right now at the plate. And they kind of like, they would like him in the DH role. And then Brett Beatty is a better defensive option. And then you have Ronnie Mauricio, who's just taking better at bats. So right now, like, I think partially it's just Vientos being a little bit more of a defensive liability and Starling Marte just really stepping up in a big way. I mean, he has the highest batting average on the team, like Starling Marte. And this is a guy that people wanted to like just yeet off the team, like 3 months ago.
Yeah. All right, we are going to take a quick commercial break, but we will be back on the other side with our interview with Laura. All right, we are back. Send this over to Mike. You had a question for Laura.
Yeah, Laura, I wanted to ask you about Tyler McGill. I know he made a start last night in Binghamton. I think he pitched an inning and 2/3. When do you think we can expect to see him back? And as a follow-up to that, what do you think his role will be on this team when he does come back?
So, I mean, he's on the 60-day IL, so that would like kind of like put him towards the tail end of August. I generally, and I feel like this is not uncommon, I can see him in a bullpen role. I feel like his stuff works better out of the bullpen. I would like to see this. Like, the thing is with like bullpen roles is like, what is the psychology behind it? Can you come into a game with people on base in a high pressure situation and still produce? I feel like Tyler McGill could potentially do that, and he has the stuff to do that. Like from the beginning of his career, everyone has always lauded his stuff. Like, oh man, this guy has really great stuff, really great stuff, really great stuff. But can he translate it? And some of the issues he sometimes like kind of ran into is like he'd be good at the beginning of the year, and sometimes he'd tail off. He'd be bad towards like the 3rd time through the lineup. A lot of that is actually cured if you're just working out of the bullpen. So I'd be really interested to see him in that role. I mean, like we kind of saw a little bit of that, even though David Peterson is certainly a different sort of pitcher. We saw a little bit of that in David Peterson that last year. I would like to see Tyler McGill doing that.
Well, his brother has certainly made a good career out of it, so maybe Tyler can do the same. All right, I got to ask you about Pete Alonso. The other day, he passed Darryl Strawberry to become the Mets' all-time home run leader. So I asked my dad if he had any questions that he wanted me to ask on the show, and this was the one he wanted me to ask you, Laura. Do you think the Mets re-sign Pete Alonso this offseason?
They should. And I don't say this from like a purely like sort of like emotional standpoint, but it genuinely is. I feel like Steve Cohen is trying to build something here. He's trying to build some sort of like, I don't know, like legacy with the Mets, very similar to what the Yankees have. And the first step in doing that is retaining a talent like Pete Alonso. This guy is not only a fantastic clubhouse presence, he worked really hard. He is, I can say, a genuinely nice person. He's good with his teammates. He's as goofy as he looks, and he sounds like. And yes, baseball is a business. And again, businesses are based on people. And I think that if you want to, I don't know, like if you want a fan base to really rally around a team, you do need people like that. Not everything has to be like that. You don't have to re-sign Jose Iglesias. You don't have to re-sign Jesse Winker if you don't want to. Pete Alonso is in a different category entirely. This is a homegrown player. And the fact that, you know, maybe Brandon Nimmo and Jeff McNeil get to finish their careers potentially with the Mets, and Pete Alonso might not, does not seem right after he's done all this. And frankly, like a lot of the times, even though he's not the sort of like quote unquote leader vocally that you see in Francisco Lindor, he is very much the heartbeat of this team. He is the guy who just like, hey, everything's gonna be all right, guys. Let's just go. So I would think and I would hope that Pete Alonso would be a lifelong Met.
Seems like he deserves to have one of those days that David Wright had recently, you know, where he is just recognized as, you know, an all-time great Met. I think it probably happens either way, but I mean, if he could spend his whole career with the Mets, I think that would be pretty special.
It's so hard to think of him playing somewhere else, you know, like you just don't see him in a different uniform.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see him as a Cub, like spiritually, but
no.
But he
I'm
did.
kidding. I'm kidding.
No, but he did fight. I mean, he did fight to stay here, and you know, I mean, that's worth something.
Yeah,
and I think loyalty should be repaid.
You know, you were talking about clubhouse presence, and we talked earlier about Juan Sodto. It's his first season as a Met. So what's it like been covering him this year?
It's so funny to hear the narratives around Juan Sodto because I find him to be delightful, like genuinely just a completely fine person to be around. I thought that way when he was on the Yankees because at that point I was covering both the Yankees and the Mets. He's 26 years old and he's kind of like a little bit snarky and he's having a good time and he's very smart and he's enjoying it. And I think sometimes that gets misread as like being aloof, but I genuinely don't see that.
Nice.
All right. So put that narrative to bed. I know sports talk radio is, you know, every time I turn it on, I met fans complaining about Soto. So, you know, but I guess that's just par for the course, especially here in New York.
I was going to say the better question is when are New York fans not complaining, Chris?
It just comes with the territory.
They do have plenty to complain about, to be fair.
That's true. Right, that is true. Try being a Sox fan.
Oh, my condolences.
It's bad. It's bad.
I'm so sorry.
I want to ask you, Laura, about some young talent that the Mets have on the way, and specifically Nolan Mlan, who is scheduled to make his major league debut this Saturday against the Mariners. Mlan has had a really impressive season so far in the minors. He's got a 2.45 ERA and a 1.13 WHIP across 113 innings between Double and AAA this season. What's the buzz around him right now, and how much of a leash do you think he has in this rotation?
I think he has a pretty significant leash on account of the fact that no one can pitch more than 5 innings. I think Nolan Mlan is an intriguing pitcher. The sweeper, obviously, everyone's talked about. Like the glove side movement is insane. Close to 3,000 rotations per minute. Like we are talking like insane movement here. And then you have what he has the two seamer, and then he has the fastball, and then he also, like, for funsies, has the curveball, which is very good. The changeup that he's working on, and I think he has one other pitch. So Nolan Mlan at 24 years old, and this is a guy coming out of Oklahoma. I think might surprise you. So the thing is with me when I'm talking about pitchers making their major league debut, the stuff is great. And I think I wrote about this. It's not about the stuff necessarily when you're making your major league debut, because the nerves are so high. And you're talking about doing it with a team during a stretch run that's basically in a tailspin. So you're going to have that onus on you of like, oh, I'm the guy. I'm going to try to fix this. You never want to do that to a pitcher, but apparently he tends to have the mental makeup to be okay with that, which is why I think specifically he was chosen for this role. I talked to Brooks Raley about it. I talked to Paul Blackburn about it, and they're like, the guy's analytical, yeah, but it's like the stage is not too big, because he looks at things like what is the goal and how can I execute it? And I think maybe in this particular situation, while that is not always the key to success, this could be extremely helpful. So I'm interested in seeing what happens on Saturday. Big right-hander, nasty stuff. I mean, like, what else can you say? Let's see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. Laura, delving into something a little bit different here as we kind of end our time with you here pretty shortly. You were featured in an article in the Stony Brook newspaper called The Statesman, and the article was called Sports Writing Pays It Forward for Newsday sports reporter Laura Albanese. I wanted to read a section of that for our audience and to you, and to have you kind of expand upon that a little bit if I could. The quote was this: "Being taken seriously by players is another issue. Albanese remembers one pitcher who snidely asked if she knew the difference between balls and strikes. Recounting her years of experience as a clubhouse reporter, she remarked, when you're a young woman, you often walk into a room and you have to prove that you know what you're talking about. And when you're a young man, you walk into a room and people assume you know what you're talking about." Tell me a little bit about that experience working in such a male-dominated profession and how you've been able to overcome those challenges, besides being really talented at what you do. Talk a little bit about that if you can.
Okay, so that experience that I was talking about happened when I was covering, I kid you not, the Long Island Ducks.
Oh my God.
Oh, really?
Yes. And this pitcher, was just like, he was close to like a perfect game. And I'm just like, I was just asking about like his changeup and how it was working. He had lost a perfect game in like the 8th inning. I'm like, what was your changeup? And he's like, do you even know the difference between a ball and a strike? Yeah. And it was like such a softball question I was asking him, just like how good your changeup was. Like, so that was kind of what I was walking into from the very beginning. And I remember walking into the Yankees clubhouse, not the Yankees. I was at Yankee Stadium, but I was in the visitors clubhouse at the time. And it was my first major league game. And a guy, like one of the players, made a very, very directly flashed me. And I was like, okay, I am 19 years old and this is my first experience. So you walk into like those situations and you wonder if you're ever going to belong there. Mm-hmm. And there were so many times where my knowledge was questioned. And frankly, my knowledge should have been questioned, because reporters don't know as much as baseball players do. And that's fine. Mm-hmm. But that can happen if you're a guy or if you're a girl, or if you played in like AAA, it doesn't matter. You are never going to know as much as Jacob deGrom knows. You're never going to know as much as like Buck Showalter knows. And that's fine. I don't mind that. But when somebody who does not know anything, like walks up to you and asks like, oh, do you know what a ball and a strike is? That's where I took exception. So it was a difficult journey, I would say, but ultimately, it was rewarding. It made me try harder. And I think sometimes it's not fair that you have to try harder, but it does make you better in the long term. Because at this point, sure, do people question me? They should, because they're questioning me for the right reasons. They're not questioning me just because of my gender. And that's all I care about.
That's a great answer.
Yeah. Thank you for speaking to that a little bit. And I'd be willing to bet you are inspiring other young women that are interested in this profession and giving them, a role model to follow. All right, we're gonna close it out with we know that I know just following you on Twitter, you are often posting about food options at various ballparks, and I think we asked you this something similar to this last time, but I gotta know, what is the one thing if I'm going to Citi Field right now? What is the one food item that I must not leave without?
All right. So if you're going as a fan, it's a different option than as if you're going as a reporter. If you're going as a fan, I would go for the curry chicken patty, which is in the Hudson Club next to the 500. It's absolutely delicious.
Okay.
But it's delicious, but it's kind of flimsy. If you are, we get there 3.5 hours before first pitch. I generally have one meal a day. If I want something that's just going to absolutely like this is going to feed me for the entire 24 hours of my life, I go to the Metro Club and I go to New York Panini and I get this turkey sandwich that is literally the size of my forearm, and it has barbecue chips in it and a chipotle aioli, and it is fantastic. It's probably the best thing you're going to eat there. So do that one if you're hungry, or share it with a friend.
All right, good stuff. All right, Laura, well, this has been great again. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. If you could tell our listeners where they could find your work and where they could find you on social media.
So you can follow my work at newsday.com/Mets, because now I'm the Mets beat reporter and every article is from me, mostly. You can see me on Twitter at Albanese Laura, on Instagram at Laura Writes Stuff, and you can listen to my podcast at First Time Caller, Long Time Listener. You can find that on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
All right, good stuff. We're going to take a quick break and we will be back with our Mental Health Minute. All right, we are back with our Mental Health Minute. Big thank you again to Laura Albanese for joining us for the interview this week. So yeah, a little bit of a shorter episode this week, but well, nice and tidy one for you here. But just wanted to end with we don't really have like a topic for this week for our Mental Health Minute, but just wanted to share a story with you guys. I didn't tell you about it, but share it with our listeners here. And it was just something, that kind of touched me, and I don't know, was a very poignant moment for me. So I went a couple weeks ago with my daughter to one of the local water parks here. It's called Splashdown, which, by the way, if you live in the New York area, definitely check it out. It's a really great place to bring kids. And of course, we've had a really hot summer here in New York, but of course we choose the morning that it's like freezing cold and cloudy and whatever, so that was my luck. But I'm gonna go. My daughter had been waiting to go with me all summer, so she's like, "You got to go with me on the slide." So I'm there. I'm freezing my butt off. We went down the slide already a couple times because we got there early, and we're waiting to go again, and we're in line. And there was these two men in front of us, and one of them you could tell that one of them, they were like with some kind of therapeutic, kind of like a day school, in probably like late teens, early 20s. You could tell there was some type of disability. And he was there with his, I guess, counselor or teacher that was, chaperoning the trip. So they're in front of us in the water slide, and the man, and the man with the disability is a black man, and the teacher was a white man, and I'll explain why that's important. But so they're there, and the guy with the disability, he's like, it's not a big slide, but he's saying how nervous he is to go down the slide. And, he's like, my heart's pounding. My heart's pounding. I don't know if I could do this. And, the teacher is just there and is just being like so kind and so encouraging to this other guy. And, just like out of nowhere, he's like, man, that song that you like, that song? And he goes, Easy on Sunday Morning. You guys know that song. I think it's is it The Temptations? Is that song
No,
by?
no. It is by the
No?
Commodores.
The,
Commodores and Lionel Richie.
I'm sorry. All right, I
I'm
get
a
them
music
mixed up.
trivia savant. Music trivia
Uh,
is my thing.
yeah, I knew you would know that. I knew you would correct me on that. So okay. So it's Easy Like Sunday Morning by the Commodores. And all of a sudden they just start singing Easy on Sunday Morning together. And it was like in perfect harmony. And it was just out of nowhere. And I'm like, oh my God, it was such a beautiful thing to hear. And listen, I'm not like a very emotional guy. I'm not a crier, but I'm standing there on the line for the water slide. Literally, tears are streaming down my face because just the image of these two men, different ages. The teacher was probably like, I don't know, maybe around my age, different ages, different races, different levels of ability, right? And just the way those two men connected in that moment was just like such a special thing to witness, and it just reminded me, like, I don't know, it inspired me to like just be kind to others. I mean, I try to do that anyway, but it was just like an extra reminder, like, just we're in this together, right? And we're all dealing with our own struggles and everything, and we all have our differences, but just showing kindness and compassion for other people. That's just really what stuck out to me from that experience. And yeah, I just want to share that with you guys. It just really it touched me, and just hopefully it could be a reminder for others to just, no matter what our differences are, to just show kindness.
Yes, sir. You should next time you come to Chicago, you should come out to my school, because those are exactly the people that I work with, and probably
Mhm.
why I've been doing it for 31 years now, is that because of working with people like that on a daily basis that are so good to other people and also
Mhm.
inspire other people to want to be better. Me by myself is not very good. Working by myself, doing anything by myself isn't very good. But when I can work as part of a team, like when I work as part of this team, and we'll work as part of a team at my school, it works really well, and it can be a life-changing experience. I'm really happy that you experienced that and that you had that. It's really cool.
Yeah, I was even looking like, I'm like, man, I kind of want to like work with, in that type of setting. I know you may think like, I don't know about that, but it
No,
was just
no,
like
not at all.
it was so like that man was making such a difference for that person. And too, like I've worked in other agencies like in the mental health field, and to be frank, like there's a lot of people that are in that field for the wrong reasons.
Yes, sir.
And you see people that are either in it for the wrong reasons or just not invested in it. Like they're just there, and often it's like very low pay, right? So they're like, they don't give a crap, and they kind of I've seen like actually people be mean, to people that have a disability, and just to see that person just really show that level of kindness and compassion was really special. So credit to you for the work that you do, man, and I'm sure that you have many stories similar to that. So
Yeah, that's such a cool experience. So, I mean, I think the thing that's even cooler about it is that you were open to that experience, that you stumbled upon it by accident, but then you really sort of engaged with it to see what was happening. A lot of people would turn away and probably not pay any attention to what was going on. And you got to see a really cool moment between two, what it sounds like really cool people.
yep, yep, for sure. All right, we are going to leave it there. We appreciate you listening. If you like the show, we would appreciate a rating and review. But next week we are back with Mike Wilner, if I'm not mistaken, talking Toronto Blue Jays.
That's
Is that
That's
All
the
right.
plan. That's the plan.
That is the plan. We never know if it's going to go according to plan, but we hopefully.
Oh, I know. I have to tell you, scheduling guests for our show is probably the most stressful part of my life. Work is not as stressful as trying to figure out who's going to be on next and trying to line them up. It can be very difficult, as you guys know. I appreciate your patience with it.
Yeah, I appreciate you and all the effort that you put into it. So we will be back with you next week. But for Dave Funnel, for Mike Carter, I am Chris Torres. Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Baseball Beat.